Alex Johnson had been working as a security guard in a restaurant for 2 months and actually liked his job. Before that, he served on a contract with the Marine Corps, so he was used to risking his life for the good of his homeland. Alex was never of a timid kind. Even back in school, he used to defend the weak and the disadvantaged. When he grew up, defending justice became the #1 mission in his life. At first, it was hard for Alex to get used to civilian life, which was fundamentally different from that in the armed forces. But over time, Alex managed to adapt to his new environment and even got a job at a restaurant. Of course, his new position couldn't be compared to his time in the Marine Corps, where every day was a challenge. But on the other hand, Alex had many duties at the restaurant too. The work of the restaurant security guard could hardly be called easy, and anyone who ever tried to do it knew it very well. Alex's predecessor was fired for his regular absenteeism and tardiness. The former Marine never allowed himself such mishaps. He was very polite, punctual, and diligent. The only thing that made Alex's life miserable was the attitude he got from the manager of the establishment. Robert Johnson was used to keeping everything under his vigilant control, and therefore he didn't like strong employees who had their own take on everything. It was for this very reason that he didn't like Alex at first sight. The most interesting thing was that the young security guard never allowed himself to criticize the restaurant manager or disrespect him in any way. The manager's hostility probably originated at some subconscious level when one person gets irritated by another for no apparent reason. At the same time, the negative energy that radiated from Robert wasn't directed only at Alex, but at all the other restaurant employees too. Of course, this upset the young security guard, but he couldn't do anything to change the situation for the better. Moreover, Robert was the boss, which meant that he could do as he pleased. Everyone else saw Alex as a pretty nice young man and felt that they could rely on him and ask for his help in difficult times. Alex's father died in a car accident when the man was 5 years old, so his mother raised him mostly on her own. Being a one-man woman, Sarah Johnson could never connect her life with someone else's. Alex loved his mother very much and always supported her in everything. Every time her son left for work, Mrs. Johnson felt anxious. She knew that her son was young and hot-tempered, and therefore could easily mess things up. On the other hand, she knew that Alex would never touch an innocent person and would always stand up for someone if they were being treated unjustly. After just a month at the job, Alex already knew all the employees at the restaurant. He knew the names of every waiter and kitchen worker. But when Alex came to work that day, he almost immediately saw a new waitress named Emily. She was a pretty young woman in her mid-20s with long blonde hair and huge gray eyes that immediately reminded Alex of a butterfly. Flitting between the tables, she served customer after customer with such grace that she immediately earned Alex's respect. Emily also seemed to be indifferent to tips and didn't see it as a tragedy if someone forgot to tip her. The guard knew that Robert Thompson took part of the tips for himself, forcing the waitstaff to give him about half the money they got from the grateful customers. Even though it was actually illegal, none of them were in a hurry to complain about the manager. It just didn't make sense to ruin the relationship between their superiors since each of them planned on continuing to work at the restaurant. As usual, Alex stood at his post and carefully watched the establishment. Most of the time, the restaurant was a rather quiet place, so there were rarely any kinds of incidents there. But that day turned out to be completely different. It all started with the fact that a noisy group of drunk young people came to the restaurant. Judging by the car they left in the parking lot, they were very well off. At the sight of these customers, Alex tensed up visibly. In his experience, it was this kind of customer who caused the most problems. Once inside the restaurant, the young people immediately started behaving obnoxiously and bullying the waitstaff. By an ironic twist of fate, it was Emily who had to serve this trio. Despite the fact that the young men radiated hostility, the waitress approached their table with a pleasant smile on her face and held out the menus. At that moment, one of the men gave her a sleazy look and chuckled. Of course, Emily understood that it would hardly be possible to serve these people without any incidents, but she still tried her best to smooth out the situation. Alex didn't take his eyes off their table. He was ready to come to Emily's aid at any moment, and only the manager behaved as if nothing was wrong. Frankly speaking, Robert didn't care about his waitstaff. All he cared about was his own profits. The owner of the restaurant didn't know about his tricks, and therefore, he honestly believed that everything was great at his establishment. Meanwhile, the young men were getting more crude and caustic in their comments. When Emily brought over their order, they made disgruntled faces and said that they weren't going to pay for it. Emily tried to reason with the obnoxious young men, but one of them grabbed her by the hand and virtually dragged her into the table. Alex couldn't stay aside and immediately got involved in the matter. Since the guard didn't look that strong, the young customers didn't see him as a threat. "Check this out, the defenders come," one of the men chuckled. But he didn't have time to continue his monologue because Alex instantly knocked him down. He used the technique that he learned and perfected during hundreds of training sessions in the Marine Corps. Having lost one man, the remaining two didn't feel as cocky anymore, but they pulled themselves together and tried to surround Alex. That didn't help, and the young guard had them both down in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Alex tried to be careful because he understood that the men were drunk and could actually be decent people and sober. Having twisted the arm of one of the young men, Alex quickly led them out onto the street. Then he went back 2 more times and got all of the obnoxious men out. "Well, that's it," Alex said, smiling. "You were so great in there," Emily exclaimed, adjusting her hair. "Oh, come on. I didn't do anything special." Alex brushed her off and went back to his post. At that moment, the manager came out of his office. The expression on Robert's face made it clear that he was unhappy with the way the situation unfolded and that the obviously wealthy customers were thrown out of the restaurant. Moreover, he knew that he could end up having problems if those young men had influential parents, since people like that definitely wouldn't be happy with the treatment that their kids got at the restaurant. Meanwhile, the manager didn't care the least bit about the fact that his waitress was mistreated, neither did he care about Alex. When the manager met the eyes of the former Marine, he immediately got mad. "What do you think you're doing? Are you trying to scare away all my clients? Who's going to come to our restaurant after you did that? I'm not paying you to throw customers out on the street," Robert snapped, pointing his finger at the door. Alex knew what the manager was doing was completely illegal and that he couldn't fire them without a good reason. But on the other hand, Alex also understood that in this particular situation, there was nothing he could really do, as all the power was in the manager's hands. Having exchanged a meaningful look with Emily, Alex wandered towards the exit. Losing his job in such an unpleasant way felt like a personal failure to him. Alex went outside and only then realized that Emily was following him. "You shouldn't have come after me. Maybe he would have let you keep your job," the man said sadly. "No way. I'm not working with that man for another minute," Emily answered. Since it was already quite late, Alex volunteered to walk Emily home. The young man wanted to play for time in order to delay seeing his mother, who would definitely ask him about his day at work. However, before they'd gone even a quarter of a mile away from the restaurant, Alex started feeling uncomfortable. It was hard to explain, but Alex sensed that something was wrong. The man felt as if someone was literally drilling into his back with a heavy, attentive gaze. Having turned around, Alex saw that a car with tinted windows was slowly driving down the street. Since it was moving very slowly, the man immediately realized that it was surveillance. "Emily, I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure we're being followed. It could be those guys from the restaurant. In any case, we need to be careful," Alex said. Emily turned around and did something that Alex least expected. She waved at the driver of the Ford, after which he blinked his headlights back to the waitress. "Do you know this car?" Alex asked in surprise. "Yes, I do," Emily said evasively. "Who are you?" Alex was genuinely surprised. Emily smiled mysteriously, but then immediately changed the topic of the conversation. Having realized that Emily wasn't going to say another word about it, Alex tensed up visibly. The young man didn't like being out of the loop. Since Emily was about to get into the car, it no longer made sense to walk her home. Having said a dry goodbye, the young man threw his hood over his head and went home. As Alex expected, his mother met him at the door. Sarah Johnson knew her son very well and immediately realized that something was wrong. "Are you in some kind of trouble? Are you having problems at work? You look upset and you're home early. What happened?" the woman asked anxiously. At the mention of work, Alex grimaced involuntarily, after which he said, "Mom, I got fired, so I don't have a job to have problems in anymore." Mrs. Johnson turned pale and took a couple of steps back. "I knew it would happen. I knew he'd get fired," flashed through the woman's head. Nevertheless, she didn't reproach Alex, but simply invited him into the kitchen to have dinner. Since the man wasn't hungry, he just sat there with a bored look on his face and poked around his salad. Then he thanked his mother for the dinner and retired into his room. Unfortunately, The man couldn't seem to fall asleep, thinking about how his keen sense of justice cost him his job. Alex only managed to fall asleep in the morning when the timid rays of sunlight already touched the windows of his bedroom. However, he wasn't destined to enjoy his sleep, as he was soon awakened by a loud knock on the door. Wondering who it could be, the man opened the door and froze in shock. The surprise was caused by the fact that it was Emily who came to see him, and she had the same mysterious smile on her face. "Emily, how did you find me?" the man exclaimed in surprise. "Yes, it's me." "Well, will you let me in, or do you want to talk here?" Emily asked with a smile. Alex immediately invited the guest inside, after which she began to fuss around in the kitchen, trying to make coffee. Mrs. Johnson looked at her son struggle with a smile but didn't interfere, and then went to her room to let the young people talk. When Alex put a cup of coffee in front of Emily, the young woman got to the main point of her visit. "How would you feel about getting the position of manager at the restaurant?" she asked. "In what restaurant? They kicked me out yesterday, remember?" Alex exclaimed in surprise. Emily smiled again and replied, "Well, they kicked you out, and now they want you back. There's a lot you don't know. The real owner of the restaurant is my father. I disguised myself as a waitress to do my internship there after graduating from university. That low-life Alfred didn't even know what an unfortunate mistake he made yesterday." It was only then that Alex realized that Emily wasn't actually a poor waitress but a millionaire's daughter. Of course, the former Marine immediately accepted Emily's offer and was ready to start working right away. Robert Thompson was fired, and Alex took his place, as promised. Under his leadership, the restaurant reached a new level, which significantly affected its profits. Rumor had it that Emily and Alex's friendship quickly turned into a romantic relationship, which seemed like it would last a long time. Those who knew this couple personally were sure that they would have many more proud moments in their lives, which they would later tell their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren at the family dinners.